Ladies and gentlemen, boy do I have a show for you today. Over here we have an RV refrigerator. This is made to go in campers, RVs, whatever you want to call them. This thing here costs nearly $1,000 if you want to replace it. If you want to use it, you've got to turn it on at least 2 days before you go on your trip. And if you are real lucky, it might get down to 50 degrees. Now, over here we have a refrigerator that you can get for about 50 bucks at any yard sale. If you can't find one of these at a yard sale for 50 bucks, you are in the wrong neighborhood. And guess what? This one will get about 35 degrees in about 1 hour. So I took this out of my camper, took me about 30 minutes. I am going to show you what I did, and I'm going to show you how you can use this thing better than you ever could have used that one. This one here, people will say, well, you can use that on propane and all that stuff. Don't worry about it. We're going to be able to boondock with this one right here. So let me get this thing hooked up in there and I'll show you how you can do it too. But before I went through the trouble, I wanted to run a few tests, and I wanted to see how cool this would get and how fast it would get cool, and would I be able to run it on those two batteries right there using a 400 watt inverter. So I will show you the results that I gained from that test, and I'll show you how I took this one out, how I'm putting that one in. Last night I run a few tests just to make sure that I could run this thing on a 400 watt inverter and off of the two batteries, and I wanted to see how much the batteries would drain down and how quick this thing would cool off. So I started at 8 o'clock at night, as you can see, and my battery reading was at 13.66. My temperature inside of the refrigerator was 70 degrees. 1 hour later, my battery had dropped down to 13.45, but my temperature inside the refrigerator in 1 hour had dropped down to 42 degrees. And you can see the other numbers there if you care to check them out. If you notice that it does drop all the way down to 22 here. When it did drop that far, I adjusted the thermostat inside the refrigerator, so that was getting a little too cold. So I didn't want everything to freeze, so I was trying to find the perfect setting inside the refrigerator. But what I do want to point out is I done my test all the way up till 10 o'clock last night, and this morning at 7 o'clock that's what was going on, but I turned it off at 7, so at 8 o'clock my battery had done kind of self-charged, or whatever you want to call it. Without any electricity to the batteries, they had went back up to 13.61, and even though the refrigerator had been off for an hour, it went from 22 to 36. I did adjust the setting in there, but I also turned it off at that same time. So anyway, that's where I got to in 1 hour of it being turned off. And right here is the info that most of you are probably interested in. It's 675 at 32 degrees, and cold cranking amp is 550 on this particular battery. And these are identical. I got them both at the exact same time. So anyway, let's see how these two hold up. So what I've done now is I have taken off this back panel here behind the refrigerator, and what I've got to do is shut off the gas at the propane tank, and I am going to loosen this right here. This is the gas line that goes to the refrigerator, so I'm going to get that loosened up, and I've also got to get something to put on here so that I've got it capped off so that I don't have to worry about gas leaking after I install the new one. So one thing I have done is I have already shut off, I've got a shut off here that goes to my battery, so I've got that shut off. And again, I'm going to turn off the propane right here. The reason you want to do that is when I get to the point that I am going to unhook that gas, I want my electricity off, I want the battery turned off, That way if there's any sparks with that propane, it's going to leak a little bit when I unhook that. I want to make sure that I don't have to worry about any kind of fire getting started up in there, because with that gas being trapped in that little box there, it could cause a little problem. Well, now inside here I've got to remove the everything that keeps this refrigerator screwed to the trailer here so that it's not moving around. Right here there was a little black plug, and there's a few down through here. I just have to take these little plugs out, and once I do, I can take my drill, and I have one of those square heads on here, and all I do is put it inside of here, and I take the screws out, so then it will be loose from the front. And you'll lift up this little door, and there's a screw in this hole here, and there's a screw in this hole over here. So you get those two screws out, and that will help you lift up this whole face that goes across here. And the reason I'm having to remove that face, I've got to take this hinge off so that I can get the door off. Unfortunately, there are screws along this side here, and this is such a tight fit, I can't get to these screws. So if I remove this door, I will be able to get to the screws. So you may not have to do that step, but I just wanted to show you what I went through. Probably depends on how it was installed and the size of the RV and that kind of thing. But anyway, let me go on to the next step. And once I removed those two screws at the top of that hinge of the door lifted straight up. And there is a hole here, and there's a hole right down here. And I had to get the screws out of there. So now that I've got those two screws on this side and two on the other side, now it should be loose from the front. Well, now every application may be different, but mine has blue and white wires that go to the battery, and that's what operates this refrigerator when you're boondocking and running it off of propane. The battery runs the control board. So anyway, what I have noticed here is the blue wires are going to the red wire. So of course these blue are going to be your positive, and it looks like the white wires are in line with the black wire. So a good way to remember it is black is not a color and white is not a color. Not is negative. And red is a color, blue is a color, that is positive. So, and something I forgot to mention earlier, but definitely worth noting, is you've got to take these wires when you unhook them, and you have got to put you some black tape on those to keep those from touching each other. Even though I've got the battery cut off at the cutoff switch, there is still electricity going through here because I have my electricity hooked up. So of course it's still trying to recharge my batteries. That's what it's meant to do, the system inside the RV. So anyway, get these taped up, that way they don't touch any of these copper pipes in here or touch each other. You definitely don't want any of that happening. So as you can see, we got the hole emptied out here. We are ready to do some measuring and try to get the new one in here, or newer one. And just in case you're not sure what's going on here, I'm inside the RV looking into the hole where the refrigerator was. This is what I think probably was a lot of the problem. They had a lot of this insulation stuffed all the way around this this refrigerator, and I understand their concept, but what I think might have happened is these refrigerators put off a lot of heat. If you've ever been to the back side of these things, they put out a lot of heat, especially if you're running them on propane. Anyway, what I'm afraid happened was this insulation probably trapped a lot of that heat and did not allow the refrigerator to breathe all the way around it. And with that being the case, it held in heat and was kind of fighting against itself. That's just my theory. I could be wrong, but anyway, I've got to start doing some cutting here. I've got to cut out a little bit of this panel here, and a little bit of that piece down at the bottom. It's like a little kick plate. So I've got to get it loosened up to make dimensions a little bit larger. The refrigerator I'm putting in is a little bit bigger than the one I took out. Okay, now I'm inside the cavity where the old refrigerator was, and there was 4 screws in this panel. This is a panel down in the floor, and that raises the refrigerator up about 2 inches. So I'm going to get that panel out. I need that 2 extra inches. If not, I would have to remove my countertop because of the height difference. So anyway, let me get this panel out. Alright, well, I got my hole cut out, and what I did is I went all the way down this wall here and I started cutting at that point right there. And the reason I did that is I wanted this face being the best looking face, and you're going to see that as you enter the RV. So I'm not so concerned about what kind of trim I have to make on this back side here. But anyway, I cut that, and I measured 19 inches over. Your measurements are going to be different than mine. But my refrigerator, I need 19 inches width to get it in there. So I don't know how to edit out cuss words and all that stuff, so I'm going to wrestle to get this in here by myself, so I'm not going to film me wrestling to get it in here. As soon as I get through wrestling it in here and cussing a little bit, then I'll turn the video back on for you. Well, I'm back outside again on the back side of where the refrigerator is going to go, and I want to put this plug in here into the gas line so that I don't have gas just leaking out. This is a 3/8 flare plug. So you can go to Lowe's, Ace, any of those places and get a 3/8 flare plug. It's made of brass, and you cannot just use any plug to put in there. You've got to make sure that it's flared in. So anyway, I'll tighten that down and test it too. You can spray 409 or Windex or anything like that around the fitting just to make sure that it is not leaking. Okay, well, I've got about everything ready to go, and I've got the propane turned back on, and I've got this spray bottle here. I'm going to spray this fitting, and what I do not want to see is I do not want to see any bubbling around that fitting. So it looks like we did good there. So all right. If this was leaking, it would blow big bubbles here, real big. Not these little bubbles. These little bubbles are because I just sprayed it out of a bottle under pressure. So anyway, if you want to use this refrigerator as a boondocking style, what you'll have to do is come back here, remove the back door. You plug this into the inverter and turn your inverter on. And once you turn the inverter on, the refrigerator should run off of the battery. If you want to run the refrigerator off of electricity, well, you still have the electrical outlet back here in the back, just like you had on the other one. You can plug it into there and you can run it directly off electricity. So yeah, glad this worked out good. Let me show you how it turned out inside. Well, there it is, folks. I had to make me a little trim piece to go along this side here. And I painted it black, that way it would kind of blend in with the side of the refrigerator there. I thought it'd be easier to paint that black than it would to probably try to get that matched with the stain of the cabinets. I also had to make a trim piece over here about 2.5 inches wide, because the other refrigerator was more wide than this one, so I did have a gap there, but I got it covered up with that trim. And let me show you what I did down below to kind of help make sure this door stays closed all the time, especially in transit. So what I did is I took a cabinet door magnet, that's what this is. I mounted it to the bottom of the refrigerator door, and what I did is I put a screw into the bottom down there. The reason I wanted it down at the bottom, I didn't want it somewhere where you would snag your arm as you're trying to put groceries in or anything, and you should never snag that with your foot, because of course the door should be closed at all times. So anyway, that helped out. It helps keep this door from coming open, and should work out good in travel. Man, I tell you what, I could not be happier about the turnout of this thing. Man, I am so pleased. It is awesome. I have so much more space inside the refrigerator. It will cool down in 1 hour. It barely uses any battery juice. Man, it's $50 if you go buy one at the yard sale or flea market or something. Even if you buy one brand new, it's $1.25. Still better than any. There's no cons to this. Nothing but pros. So hey, I hope this helps you out. I hope if y'all go through the change that I've gone through here, hopefully you'll be as tickled as I am. It did get dark before I got to show you on here, but what I'm doing right now until I get an inverter inside my RV is I am just running an inverter outside the back panel and running the wire over to the battery. So I'm only going to have that for probably about a month or so, so no big deal. Most of the time I do either have electricity or have a generator going anyway. So folks, I appreciate y'all spending some time with me. Hopefully this video helped y'all out. If you hadn't hit the like and subscribe and all that fun stuff, you know what to do. I appreciate it. See y'all real soon. Bye-bye.